Hello, and we're good to go, and welcome to Lesson 4. Lesson 4 is under the main topic of psychological problems. We're looking at what causes depression. Before we get going with what causes depression, can I please urge you to have a look at Show My Homework, making sure that you are looking at the attached documents that relate to what we're talking to you about on this YouTube channel, writing down the key terms. Please do the activities as well. In addition to that, can you write key notes, please, as well, based upon the narrative that I'm about to deliver? So what causes depression? There are generally considered to be, by psychologists, two main causes of depression, and they are the influences of nature, which is a biological explanation for depression, and secondly, the influences of nurture, which is a psychological explanation for depression. We're clearly going to start with the biological explanation, and this is the nurture. It is suggested that whether an individual will suffer from depression is predetermined by their genes and biology. So it's that simple, by the genes that they inherit from their parents. So in that way, you could argue that if your family members are more predisposed to some form of depression, you will be too. Therefore, one biological explanation is that depression can be caused by an imbalance of neurotransmitters, or in other words, chemicals. And the chemicals that we're specifically talking about today is something called serotonin. The brain uses these chemicals to communicate with itself and with the nervous system in our body. These chemical messages are received and sent by the brain's neurons, or the nerve cells. Neurons are constantly communicating with each other using neurotransmitters. Okay, your brain is absolutely packed with relay neurons, and they are surrounded, these the nucleus of the relay neurons, with dendrites, and the dendrites of each relay neuron do not touch. You have a little synaptic gap in between each of the relay neurons, and what travels between that gap are neurotransmitters. The type of neurotransmitter that we're particularly talking about today is serotonin. So to be blunt, people who perhaps suffer from forms of depression may well have a lack of serotonin within the synaptic gap, or within the vesicles, in other words, the pockets of the dendrites of the relay neurons. So serotonin helps to control biological functions like, for example, like sleep and aggression, appetite and mood. And that is perhaps why, if we have a lack of these, then we lack the capacity to perhaps have regular sleep. We are lethargic and certainly not aggressive or fiery. We have a lack of appetite, a lack of mood. And it's been revealed in some scans that actually, whilst it's very, very difficult to actually measure the volume of serotonin itself, we can look at the numbers of vesicles and receptors, and therefore that gives us a clear indicator in the patient of where there are not many vesicles and receptors. This could be a marker that there is a lack of serotonin, and therefore that might correlate to the patient's lack of positivity, and might be the reason for their depressed state. So that, very briefly, is the reason for why perhaps some psychologists believe that nature is an explanation for depression. So there is a biological explanation. The other explanation, as we say, is nurture, and there is a psychological explanation for depression. And the life experience that we have and environment in which we live in affects how an individual grows up and lives. Now, the cognitive theory is a psychological approach that believes our thought processes affect our behavior. According to cognitive theory, behavior and emotions are influenced by the way people explain the things that happen to them. and the views that they have about themselves and the world. Now, let's be quite blunt here. We talked before about schemas. If you've not done schemas yet, I'll briefly explain. Schemas are building blocks of knowledge about objects, about experiences that you have in the world, about people. Essentially, if you are surrounded by negativity and you live in a grey environment, you're surrounded by grey people, well, let's take it to a different level. Those people actually hurt you. They're not pleasant. You will start to, not literally, but metaphorically, build up a wall of negative schemas, and that will have an impact in terms of your cognition and how you think, because your experience of the world is not just isolated to an external experience. It actually will have an impact on how you think and how you feel, and therefore it will certainly have an impact on whether you remain mentally healthy or whether you become mentally unhealthy, to the extent that you might develop some form of bipolar or unipolar. We are then finally need to look at how attribution influences depression. Attribution is the way people explain situations and behave. Attributions have also been linked with depression. Attributions are the way in which people explain the causes of situations and behavior. Okay, so attribution is something that would certainly contribute towards our mental disposition. And what I'd like you to do, guys, is to have a look, so I don't want this YouTube clip being too long, is to have a look at page 176, 177 specifically, and to make notes on the key terms, please, and have a go at the activities. Good luck.